Hello, everyone. I'd like to begin by taking a moment to welcome you all to this webinar. My name is Patricia Gadetti, and I'm the Director of Programs at the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. Before I introduce our esteemed presenters, we have a few housekeeping items. If you're looking for additional resources for school leaders, educators, and parents, the National Alliance has compiled a number of COVID-19 specific resources on our website. Visit covid19.publiccharters.org for more information. Additionally, the National Alliance will be hosting a number of helpful webinars over the course of the next few weeks. We encourage you to visit www.publiccharters.org/webinars to see our upcoming offerings. Today's webinar will be recorded, and a link will be available on our website in the next few days. All participants are currently muted, but we still want you to engage with us. For those of you joining us on Zoom, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen there is a Q&A icon. Please type your questions there and our team will pose the questions to the presenters at the proper time. And with that, it is my honor to introduce our moderator for today's webinar. She's the K-12 Senior Product Marketing Manager at Salesforce. Please welcome Kara Kiono.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Patty, for that introduction. And we're really grateful to you for hosting this webinar today. And I just wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for joining this discussion on operationalizing equity, enabling holistic student support. We're excited to be hosting a session on this incredibly important topic. And as Patty mentioned, I'm Kara Kiono, the K-12 Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Salesforce.org on the Education Cloud team. And I'm really excited to be joined by charter school leaders from Boston Day and Evening Academy today, who will share more about the important work that they're doing to support student success. Great, so before we go any further, here is our forward-looking statement. It wouldn't be a Salesforce presentation without it. So just a quick reminder to base all purchasing decisions on products and services that are currently available. And I want to just start off with a big thank you to all of you for joining us today. We know that you are all hard at work ensuring the health, safety, and success of your students and your school communities, which is incredibly important and urgent. So we really appreciate you making the time to join us and hope that what we cover here today will help you all in your efforts at your schools. And so I'm thrilled to have two powerful education leaders and my colleague with us to unpack this topic of operationalizing equity. So from left to right, we have Herman Freewald, the K-12 Industry Solutions Director for Student Success at Salesforce.org. In his role, Herman works to find and understand unmet needs in schools and districts and really build solutions to help best meet those needs. Then we have Cam Scott, the Data and Accountability Manager at Boston Day and Evening Academy. Previously, Cam served as an innovation systems designer for Boston Public Schools, where she worked to improve processes that enable the spread of innovation throughout the district. And then we have Lauren Berry, the Director of Institutional Advancement at Boston Day and Evening Academy. She is passionate about eliminating barriers for students in Boston and has focused on supporting alternative pathways for high school students to achieve their diploma throughout much of her career. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. And so I will just move on quickly to today's agenda. I'll kick off the discussion with an overview of Salesforce.org and how we are supporting K-12 schools. I'll then pass it over to Herman for an overview of what we're seeing in education right now. We'll then dive deeper into the work happening at BDA led by Cam and Lauren. And then we'll highlight how Salesforce solutions can help schools deliver equitable and holistic student support. And finally, we'll close with some time for audience Q&A and next steps. So like Patty said, please type in your questions and we'll take those towards the end. Great, so diving deeper into Salesforce.org and Education Cloud for K-12. So as the social impact center of Salesforce, we really are looking to provide access to powerful technology, strategic community partnerships, and impactful investments. And we're able to innovate on top of the world's #1 CRM platform and have a hand in creating purpose-built technology solutions specifically for K-12 schools and districts. And here's a look at our actual education community from K-12 private, charter, and public schools to community colleges and large four-year public and private universities. We're truly humbled to work with more than 1,000 K-12 schools and systems, including charter networks like KIPP and Green Dot, as well as charter schools like Austin Achieve and BDEA. And so to meet the needs of schools and districts, we have Education Cloud for K-12, which combines 4 solutions based on pain points we've heard, all built on the Salesforce platform. So from admissions and enrollment to student success, which Cam and Lauren will talk about their use of Salesforce there today specifically, to fundraising and grants management and communications and family engagement. And as I mentioned, today we're really going to be focusing on that area of student success. And we see our role as helping schools collaborate and manage student interventions around 360-degree student views, tracking student data and progress. And there are innovative solutions that are coming from the K-12 schools and districts that we work with, like BDEA, that are helping inform our own product development, which we'll touch on later in this discussion. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Herman, to discuss some of the trends we're seeing in education today, specifically focused on student success. So Herman, over to you.
Thanks, Kara. So hello, everyone. Excited to be here with you all today. So with the pandemic in full swing, I think we often talk about the new normal. I want to first start with acknowledging the challenging context that schools and districts were already navigating before the pandemic. I think it's important to sort of share that common fact base. Some of the stuff you might already know, some of it might be new. I just like to establish that sort of foundation. So I think, we all know that there are many factors outside the classroom that influence the opportunity gaps that we see in education. Poverty rates have been increasing over time. I imagine now with the pandemic, we'll see some shifts there as well. But at the last look that we had, 1 in 5 students were living in poverty. I think that's important context because there are a lot of additional factors that brings into the equation, right? So students living in poverty are 4 times more likely to be chronically absent. ESSA has put chronic absence at the center because we know that it's a leading indicator of dropout risk, and it's an equity issue, right? That can too easily be hidden within average daily attendance. And so given the importance of outside factors such as chronic absence and many others, it is not surprising that teachers then report losing 20% of their time resolving non-academic barriers. When I think about 20%, that's 1 day a week. It's a really significant amount of time. Add to that counselors are reporting 464 students to every 1 counselor. That's the average caseload that we're seeing. That's almost 200% over the recommended caseload. So we have schools that are really stretched thin here, and we see this trend where districts across the country have mostly implemented early warning systems to help with that, which I think is a great first step. The challenge there is over half the schools surveyed who have early warning systems report a lack of coordination between their alerts and the services provided. So it's kind of a very brief and really abbreviated tour of what I like to call the old abnormal, which is just to help set some context. But yeah, so more topically speaking, we have the impact that COVID-19 is having on our country and our education system. So when we look at last school year, COVID-19 forced the closure of many businesses and schools across the country. This led to record unemployment, which then quickly from an education lens translates into housing and food insecurity for students and families. It also led to widespread remote learning, which quickly shined the light on the digital divide, which was really then we learned the learning divide in that context. And WA usually does great analysis on the summer slide. They've shifted and they're now talking about the COVID slide, which has larger and more disparate gaps. So ultimately what I see here is the pandemic exacerbating all of these existing challenges and inequities, and especially for our most vulnerable populations. So if I take a step back, when I look at what we're seeing today, I see a series of 4 intersecting crises playing out. The first is that health and safety crisis due to COVID-19 we've already touched on. The next is that inequality crisis, which is not new, but has been exacerbated as we discussed. Then on top of that, we have the racial justice crisis, which also is not new, but has been put in the spotlight with the killings of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and others. And then lastly, we have the crisis of trust playing out, and that's happening on multiple levels, but I want to show you a look at that from a sort of parent lens, right? So parent and school. So we, as an organization, we've surveyed parents across the country, and we found that over half felt that the country has deprioritized education. Under 40% believe that the children in the US will have access to a quality education this year, and under 40% are even confident that children can be kept safe at school this year. So you see, a real spike in the sort of trust crisis from that parent perspective playing out in education. Again, I think that's probably in large part, due to a lack of resourcing, but that's kind of my own interpretation. I'll leave you to have your own interpretation as well. Next, we looked at a survey. We did a survey with over 500 educators and education leaders across the country. And we asked questions around how can technology help? How can it help support your student support efforts? And the number one request that we saw was for technology tools that could help student support staff to create and document student success plans. The second most requested technology capability was to make this work more collaborative across student support teams. And you could imagine in a remote environment, that's more important than ever. The third highest ranked request was to make it easy to log student support interactions and track the services provided, which is sort of echoing that earlier finding that we had. So all of these we think are relevant to creating equitable student support, you know, in the old abnormal, right? But even more urgent given the increased challenges in supporting students in the new normal. So with that, that wraps up our research section. I want to now hand it over to Kamala Scott and Lauren Berry, who are two leaders in the field working at BDEA and successfully using technology to support their holistic support of students. So over to you, Cam and Lauren.
Hi there, I'm Lauren Barry, the Director of Institutional Advancement at Boston Day and Evening. I'm going to take you through a little bit about BDA, who we are, our model, and then Cam's going to take you on a deep dive of our data systems and how they support our model. So we are Boston Day and Evening Academy. We are an in-district Horace Mann alternative charter school in Boston. Say that 3 times fast. We serve over 400 students per year who are on average 16 to 23 years of age. Our students come to us, they've all attended another school prior to enrolling with BDA and just haven't really been well served in a more traditional model. So they come to us seeking a different type of schooling experience and one that offers really rigorous support for them to achieve their high school diploma and really get on the right track for their postgraduate plans. Go to the next slide. Yep. So BDA is really grounded on 3 pillars, and I'll kind of take you briefly through each one. The first one is our competency-based model of education. So we were founded in 1995 as a diploma granting night school, and ever since then we've had a competency-based model. So we've been doing this for quite a while. That model is based on mastery instead of seat time. So students only progress forward when they've mastered content. And we also break our school year into 3 trimesters, and that's really intentional because we believe that if something goes wrong for a student in one particular trimester, we don't want them to have to repeat an entire year. I think, you know, those of us who have been in schools know how painful that can be sometimes for students and for the teachers as well. And so we break our school year out into those 3 trimesters that are comprised of various modules. We also offer 4 graduation ceremonies per year because we believe that students should not have to wait to move on to their postgraduate plans. They can get started on that right away after graduating. And what all of this means is that our students are always in progress. There's no failure or going backwards. There's only moving forward. Additionally, we have, previous slide, sorry. We have a whole student approach to our school. So BDA believes that earning a high school diploma is super important, obviously, because we're a high school, but we also believe that students, we need to set students up for success in their postgraduate lives as well. And so what we offer is a series of supports that will get them to that diploma, but also allow them to have long-term success. For starters, we invest in relationships, and we mean that literally and figuratively. We believe that strong, trusting adult relationships with adults in the building will cause our students to be successful academically and emotionally. So we invest in low student-teacher ratios. We have a robust student support department, and every student is assigned to a teacher advisor. Additionally, we have a very strong postgraduate planning arm, which does the usual college planning and financial aid, but also introduces students to what could come after BDA. So they take courses in some career and college planning, and then they culminate with a capstone project, which is a full trimester of really diving into like what they want to do after BDA. We also partner with a lot of community-based organizations to provide things like clinical counseling to our students and food and housing resources and things of that nature. Finally, we have a set of enrichment courses that all students have access to in career planning, hands-on career workshops, the arts, physical education. So we're really looking at this sort of like holistic approach to supporting our students that's apart from our academic model. So Herman touched on a lot of ways that COVID has impacted schools, and I think all of them are absolutely true of BDA. Most BDA students live in neighborhoods in Boston that have very high transmission rates, which means that they're experiencing tremendous loss. And we mean that in terms of loss of life in their families and amongst their friends, but also job losses. Most of our students have grown up in poverty, which means that they are far less insulated from the impacts of an economic downturn than their more affluent peers. Many of them also live in these beautiful, vibrant, multi-generational homes and communities, which in normal times is wonderful for our students. They get to live with their grandparents and their parents. But during COVID means that anytime they're going to school or going to work, they're putting the elder generation that lives with them at risk. And that really weighs very heavily on our students. Herman talked about the predicted academic disparities and like the COVID slide that we're predicting is going to happen across the country. For BDA students, many of whom enter with about like a 6th to 8th grade reading and math level, that just spells sort of disaster for many of our students. And so we're really focusing on what we can do now to support students so that they're not seeing those enormous setbacks as a result of COVID. But we are seeing a definite downturn in engagement and achievement during remote learning. Many students come to BDA for those relationships that I talked about. And so it's hard to replicate those for a virtual environment, although we're doing our best. Additionally, many of our students have a really strong commitment to supporting their families, which means that they're either full-time employed themselves or they're caring for children in their household, either their own children or their siblings. So really there's just a lot of things going on as a result of COVID that are drawing our students' attention away from their schooling. So I'm going to hand it to Cam to sort of talk about traditionally how we have supported our students using our data systems and now sort of what that looks like during COVID.
Thank you, Lauren, and happy to be here with everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the technical components of how we support students. So with the knowledge of who BDA students are and what they bring to the community socially, emotionally, and academically, BDA wanted to support students in an informed way. This dates back to 2014 and a little earlier. So the early stages of Connects, which is BDA student information system, involved customizing objects to support our data collection and relationship building practices. I'm going to highlight a few of these here in this diagram, but if you look at the circular portion of the diagram, you can think of them as touch points or almost gateways to our objects in Salesforce. These represent teams or individual staff who gather data points or data inputs at each point that they interact with students. So some of these processes are paper form, digital surveys, interviews, referrals, logs, and more. So we have different various ways that we collect data on students, but they all kind of happen here. So admissions, for example, our admissions director is the first point of contact for new BDA students. Our admissions director, her efforts to assist students in re-engaging in their education at BDEA. By way of the way she goes about it, she's able to help students outline their personal journeys and aspirations while also gathering ACEs survey data. You may be familiar with that, which is adverse childhood experiences. She's able to collect data on their risk factors. So are they homeless? Do they have anxiety? Are they experiencing food insecurity? Any of those. There's a whole gambit that we collect. The Academic Review Committee is a team that supports special education, English language learners, and tiered interventions for learners who need modifications to their learning experience in order to be successful. And then we have housing and homeless support. So Herman talked a little bit about caseloads. We have advisors and student support team members who have caseloads of students. Advisors tend to have 15 or so students, and student support team members tend to serve about 75 to 90 students in their caseload. And either of them could indicate a student's housing need in the form of a log, and then that would then alert our designated housing and homeless liaison to spring into action. So through all of these touch points, we're able to get some measurable information, like at-risk detection and early trauma intervention, because we collect this data so early. We are able to look at resource referrals, how many referrals to counseling did we make in a year, things like that. But the one thing I want you to note here is that in our future state, our goals, one of our goals and aspirations is to look at soft skill development and create a dashboard around that. BDA is totally committed to nailing down soft skill development because we have the habits of success, which are vision, perseverance, curiosity, social intelligence, and self-regulation. And those are some of the initial intangibles we want to define and track as a school. So moving on to the next slide, by making the student experience the center of our drive, we're able to design the right fit technical experience that increases the relevance and ownership of data for students. And then it also increases the collaboration of BDA staff. So a student's profile has 3 components, as you can see here: the academic component, socio-emotional component, and then the postgraduate planning. And the culmination of data collection that happens at all of these touch points is what makes up the BDA difference, both technically and in practice, which gives us the ability to, 1, understand the student profile holistically, and then 2, subsequently serve the actual student more authentically. So I want to walk you through the student roadmap, which is one of the really early ways we start operationalizing equity for students. We can go to the next slide. Awesome. The student roadmap is kind of like the visual of courses or competencies, in our case, that students have to take in order to progress toward graduation. Students are able to take classes that are just right for their performance levels and demonstrate and monitor their competence in benchmark and competency completion here. So we introduced the new benchmark status bar this year, which shows a student how many benchmarks they've earned toward a competency. So we got student feedback on this, and they really wanted real-time informative information. So that was a new addition. So like literacy analysis, as an example, is that student has received all the benchmarks for that competency. And so that student can now be rated in that competency. Something else that we added to this roadmap are emancipatory competencies. And we did this in order to hold students and educators accountable for humanizing Black and Latino students and equipping them with knowledge and skills to navigate and liberate themselves through self-agency. We're gonna zoom in so you can see what some of those competencies involve. And you can see that this student has a competent in the EC4 here. So this is a competence, a benchmark that the student has shown competence in. And this is how a student can click on the modules or competencies in their roadmap, and it zooms in to give them more details on what they need to complete. All right, then we're gonna look at some attendance summaries. So the top image is attendance over time. In this example, the student had really excellent attendance from the first trimester, their first trimester with us through their second trimester with us. We see that the student really took a hit in the third trimester, which was right in the thick of COVID and when things went remote, and managing that time for all of us was really hard. So his attendance declined there. We can see that now in this current term, he's in the yellow and his attendance is improving. But what I really wanted you to know is that in that third trimester, he only completed half of the courses or the competencies he was enrolled in. So this is something that as an advisor or a student support team member, I would like to shed light on so that the student can then start to make connections between attendance and its implications on a graduation projection. And then so in my conversation with the student, I might look at weekly attendance, which is this bottom image. And then we can talk about what was happening in week 1, what was happening in week 2. You came back, you were in the green again, doing really well. And then we see that something else might have happened in week 3 that disengaged you. So it's definitely a great conversation facilitation tool. All right, we're going to move on to the student support component of Connects. Students have the ability to request their own services, which I think is cool and unique. Staff and admin also have that ability. So we could request services on the student's behalf, but this is from a student's view. So a student could go in, say, I'm looking to talk to someone about a schedule change. I had a conflict with the teacher and I now want to document that. Maybe I'm experiencing a housing issue and now I want to ask what are my next steps? Who can I tell this information to? And then what can I do from there? So that's what this page is. They can click there. And then the request goes to the student support log queue. So whether I do the request or a student does the request for himself or herself, it goes to the student support team member and is prioritized by urgency. So then the student support team member knows how to act and how quickly to act. Some of the other more positive reinforcements we have within our database are shout outs. So you could, I think if you click forward, it'll give us a little screenshot. There we go. There's some shout outs here about a student's performance and engagement with Zoom during COVID. So I thought that was really cool to see. You can, maybe a student has just shown some great leadership skills and you want to say, job well done. I tend to give shout outs for students who just completed the MCAS because it is a stressful time for students. It's a lot of pressure. So I want to say, good job. You made it through this MCAS. Congratulations. So that's one feature we have. Another feature is my awards. Students can look at their awards to see what they've been given, who they were given the award by, and then what the award type is. Is it excellence? Is it most improved? We have, like spoken word awards. So we have a variety of awards and students get those at the end of each trimester. And then the last component I want to shed light on is the postgraduate planning arm of Connects. And this is a screen grab of just a really authentic conversation, a documented authentic conversation that our director of postgraduate planning put into Connects. So this student here, she had applied for something and then she hadn't heard back. So she met with the director, the PGP director, and they spoke at length about, how do we pivot? What might be the next steps we want to take since you haven't heard anything back? They kind of came to an agreement that she wants to apply to school in the fall. And so let's look at some dual enrollment courses as an option before we get to applying. And then from that conversation, the student said, I'm interested in Japanese. Me and my friends are doing this thing. And so she actually is now enrolled in a course at Bunker Hill Community College here for elementary Japanese. So postgraduate plans, this is just a postgraduate note that I have a screenshot of here, but postgraduate plans are crafted by each student over time, and then it combines their personal interests. So they do an About Me survey from the moment they enter BDEA. They then go on to take a Beyond BDA course. And then as a part of their capstone, right before graduation, they think about what am I doing outside of school? What are my interests professionally? and they present on that as well. So all that is captured in Connects, and it just becomes an attainable blueprint for the student leaving BDEA. All right, so here's our a roadmap of kind of where we've been, where we're headed. In 2014, BDA began searching for a database to support our learning model, to support competency-based learning. And then in 2016, 2017, we moved on to the onboarding. We made a selection and went with Salesforce, and then so now it's a big data dump. We're moving data into this digital space. From 2018 and 19, that's when I began at BDEA. We started stabilizing our practices. How are we inputting course ratings? If a student starts a course, but it's because students are always in progress, and now the student they don't need the whole course, they need a piece of the course. How does course how does course rating entry happen? So just strategizing and stabilizing some of those practices. And then now where we are in 2020 is streamlining with the user's ease in mind. So a lot of it was staff and adult facing, but now we're thinking about the student, putting the student at the center of our design for our beta version of Connects. All right, so our goals for implementing Salesforce is just to have ready-where data. This is the what, the when, the where. What do you need? When do you need it? Where can you find it? How quickly can you get the data you need to be able to do something with it? And then from there, we want to increase transparency. This is more of the why. And ultimately, the linchpin for user buy-in. Students want to know, why am I logging on? Why is this important for me? Teachers may want to know the same, or a student support team member might want to know the same. How is this relevant for me? So building transparency around data so that people buy into the process and then contribute to the process. And then the last area is measuring effectiveness. So not just tracking, but now measuring, and then using the outcomes or the outputs to be able to refine or redefine what an engaging experience looks like for the student, not just for the adults in the student space. All right, of course, there's always key challenges when it comes to technology, and we know that COVID is kind of making some of these challenges really glaring. So we're highlighting what hinders or what might hinder quick engagement and efficient support for students. Obviously, inconsistent communication and the quality of communication, even standardizing communication. That's something BDA is working on so that we don't have to consume so much context to be able to make a decision. And how frequently should communication happen, and how relevant is the communication? Who needs to know what? Not everyone needs to know this bit of information. How do we then target and make sure communication has channels of flow? And then decentralized systems. This is a big one because we know that systems tend to not talk to one another, which creates even more inefficiencies because the data says something here and not the same thing there. So thinking about automations or APIs and things to integrate systems, if that is an option. And then executive functioning skills have been a challenge for both adults and students, learning how to navigate these digital platforms. So we've been working to help students, to give students guides on how to get through Connects, Power School Learning, all of these platforms they have to engage with. And then the big one is outdated processes and this reliance that we had on paper-based systems. So really taking the time to figure out if your paper-based system makes sense, and then how do you digitize that if you like to as an organization. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Lauren to talk about our results and key takeaways.
Great, thanks, Kim. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about the three pillars to BDA, which is our competency-based education system, our postgraduate planning, and our student support system. And I think that Cam really did a great job illustrating how our data system supports each one of those pillars and really lends a sense of transparency so that students can see where they're at in terms of all three. And so some results that we've had in those areas, 100% of BDA graduates last year had a postgraduate plan uploaded into Connects. Those plans varied in terms of what the goal was, but all of the graduates had a plan uploaded, which means that they also had a conversation with members of our staff to really fine tune what their plans were moving forward. In terms of our student support team, it's sort of the second and fourth bullets. One is that we can really pay attention to our students' things like suspension rate, which is not really a fun data point necessarily to track, but we're really interested to see many of our students have been suspended prior to coming to BDA, and making sure that, you know, we're really providing sort of the mediation, the restorative justice and things like that, so that that doesn't continue happening. And our data system can tell us that that is working, that system is working, because ours is low at 2.7% per year. So that's how we know that arm of our school is working. Additionally, our student support team does a lot of counseling referrals. There were 129 of them last year, and that's generally to outside clinical counseling. And so that's another way that we can just see, you know, the system is working. Students are getting connected to the resources that they need in order to thrive academically and socially. And then finally, just sort of like a general data point is that in the first 2 weeks of school this year, 40% of BDA students have logged into Connects. And honestly, you know, even though it's only at 40% right now, you have to consider the fact that there's not a lot of data in Connects right now. There's not really grades being posted yet within the first 2 weeks. So that's really quite a few students who are going there, just really because we've been pushing the value of going in there, seeing where you're at, seeing what resources are available to you in Connects. So we're really trying to push this as like a hub for everything that students need to be successful at the school. And as you can see, those 40% that are logging in multiple times. And so that's really just building really great habits that will stand them in good stead as they move forward. And then finally, our sort of large scale takeaways is, for us, the practice came first. So we had those three pillars. BDA was really great at offering student supports, postgraduate planning, competency-based education. We needed a system that matched those practices, not the other way around. And so really taking the time to build a system that meets your mission and vision, and not just sort of using whatever happens to be handy is one key takeaway. The second thing is we always involve students in our system building. So students are the end users, and therefore everything that we're building, we should make sure is practical and useful for our students and gets them the information that they need in a efficient manner. And then finally, think beyond academics. I think a lot of programs that schools use, it's like, you know, it's got grades, it's got attendance, but does it track the things that you need in order to help your students be successful? And does it go beyond sort of that base level academics?
All right, and then I'm going to highlight the next steps that we're taking as a school. We've taken some time, and it took a few tries to nail down this vision statement for our second iteration of Connects. And we really want to provide a streamlined hub of transparent information that centralizes student, family, and staff interactions, while fostering a consistent, holistic methodology that allows for students to make timely decisions about their academic and social emotional journeys. So making students the pilot of their learning experience, and making sure they have say-so and input. And we want to bring data to life. We want to create dashboards. We want to make sure that whoever the user is, he or she can make an informed decision to help the student along toward graduation, or the student help himself or herself along toward graduation. So just increasing student and staff agency around data and data decision-making is the big North Star for our beta version, which hopefully is a big part of our 3-year strategic plan. So hopefully in a couple years, we'll be more closer to this goal.
All right. Thank you so much, Cam and Lauren, for deep diving into the work that you're doing to support students and ensuring that they're all successful. I just want to quickly point out that everything BDEA showed you, they built themselves. And a lot of it was built with clicks, not code, using the incredibly customizable Salesforce platform. I'm always so inspired and humbled to see how K-12 leaders are using the platform to operationalize equity. And I think you see that with BDEA. I want to call out a few organizations that have inspired our work in this area. So, obviously I'll start with BDEA, witnessing how your organization is using technology too. And I think this is one of the things that's so interesting and unique with your model is the way that you're using technology to really foster student agency and also to holistically support students. That's been a big inspiration to us. We've also been, really excited to partner with Oakland Unified School District to help build a student support solution for them. We've had some of preliminary results last year with the pilot that we ran there, where Oakland was able to match students from referral to service 36% faster using the platform. And lastly, Harlem Children's Zone, who's been using the Salesforce platform to coordinate extensive wraparound services and track over 600 goals a year to ensure that students stay on track. That's been another implementation that we've learned so much from about the role that tech can play in supporting educators and student support staff in supporting students. So the work that's happening in schools and districts like Boston Day and Evening and Oakland, it's really helping to inform our own product development. We're learning so much from the folks that we get to work with. And we are developing our own student support product so that future schools can get to a student support solution even faster. And so I'm excited to share with you our latest innovation in student success, which is launching later this year. It's the Student Success Hub. Student Success Hub is designed to help schools support the whole student, intervene collaboratively, track student progress, and improve outcomes. Student support staff can use this to triage student caseloads, collaborate around student support, develop personalized success plans, track interactions, monitor student progress. So I'm really excited to give you a preview of Student Success Hub today, and we can dive into the demo. So let's take a look and see it in action.
Carmen is a school counselor at Connected School District, and one of the students in her caseload, Sophia, recently shifted to full-time remote learning as a result of a COVID-19 exposure in her household. Our counselor, Carmen, is out for a walk when she receives an alert on her phone regarding Sophia, based on her most recent wellness check survey. As she opens up the alert, she sees the update to Sophia's learning modality from hybrid to remote only. She can quickly access Sophia's unified student record right from an alert for more information on Sophia. With Student Success Hub, Carmen can easily see a 360-degree view of any student at any time, all from her mobile device. Carmen would like to quickly reach out to Sophia's mother, Julie, to check in. She skims Sophia's record to see if there's anything else she needs to know before calling. She notices a few absences from last week's online class. She also sees that Sophia is an aspiring first-gen college prospect and that her courses and grades have her on track for that goal. Otherwise, she sees no additional concerns. In addition to attendance, attributes, and coursework, she can see all communications between the school and Sophia's family, which is critical to delivering personalized support. Fully informed of Sophia's situation, Carmen calls Julie, Sophia's mother, about their needs to see how they're doing at home. Through a caring conversation, she learns that Sophia is in need of a Chromebook and they are having issues with their home Wi-Fi. With a little more probing, Carmen also learns that they would like information on local food pantries. She assures Julie that she'll get Sophia the right resources she needs and logs the call. Once logged, the rest of Sophia's success team will also see the history of this communication, so they'll never be out of the loop. Once Carmen is home from her walk, she logs into Student Success Hub on her laptop. Her homepage is tailored to give her the information she needs to stay organized and focus her efforts where they're needed most across the 400 students in her caseload. She's able to quickly and easily pick up where she left off by opening Sophia's student record. She records the details of her discussion with Sophia's mother in a note, then creates attributes for Sophia's technology barriers and food insecurity as a first step in connecting Sophia and her family to the right support services. A connectivity success plan is automatically applied to Sophia's record and assigned to the school's IT administrator to prep a laptop and Wi-Fi hotspot to get Sophia connected at home. Carmen also manually applies a college readiness success plan. Success plans provide customizable sets of tasks for common interventions and support scenarios so that staff always have a clear plan of action and are never wondering what's next or who's on point. Based on the attributes added to Sophia's student record, Einstein's next best action recommends that Carmen add the school's social worker, Sam, to Sophia's success team. Success teams enable multidisciplinary student support staff to collaborate while limiting this sensitive information for those who are directly supporting Sophia. After adding Sam to Sophia's team, she's assigned him a task to follow up with Sophia's mother regarding local food pantries and community resources. This is the real-time collaboration that's possible from anywhere with Student Success Hub. With Sophia and her family now connected to the resources they need and fully supported, Carmen can close out this alert. Truly a job well done. But Carmen's day isn't finished quite yet. Next, she goes into a virtual student success team meeting with school leadership. Their team pulls up their Einstein Analytics dashboard where they can have targeted conversations by reviewing student statuses and activity across the school. In this dashboard, the team can view all of their student data and narrow in to identify students in need of support. Once these students are identified, teams can move quickly into action to provide a personalized support approach like we saw with Sophia. All of their outreach efforts, communications, and interventions are then easily aggregated and reported to district leadership.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed that preview of Student Success Hub. If you'd like to stay updated as the product develops before it'll come out soon, please sign up using the link here. So sfdc.co/Student Success Hub. Again, if you want to stay updated. And I'll now turn it back over to Kara and we'll open it up for some audience Q&A. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Herman and Cam, Lauren. Really appreciate you guys speaking and sharing all the great work you're doing. If you guys don't all mind coming back on camera, that'd be great. I see questions coming in from different folks in the audience and a lot of questions for you all. So let me pull those up. So a question here for Cam and Lauren, have you noticed a notable increase in student engagement through the use of this system? I know that's been impacted by COVID, but just having the technology in place, have you seen an increase in student engagement over time?
Yeah, I'd say I surely have seen an increase in student independence on the platform. We tend to have advisory curriculum or tasks or assignments kind of that allow students to at least tap into the platform with their advisor there. But students are tapping in without any assistance. We now have a landing page too that takes students through the step-by-step. If you forgot your password, this is how you recover it. This is where you go to look at your courses. So students are, I mean, we've had like 300 clicks on that page. And we just launched it this term. So students are clicking on that, figuring out how to get where they need to go in the software to be able to answer their own questions. And previously they were really passive in their experience with the software. They just would want someone to tell them how to do it. So I would say they're certainly improving in that respect.
Great, thank you for sharing. And also just, speaks to your model, putting students at the center, giving them agency over their learning and their interaction with you all. So that's really great to hear. And then another question for our team at BDEA is, there a process? This is a great question. Is there a process to get staff to buy in, particularly on the beta portion, just in terms of collaborating on the technology, how you guys have approached that?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we're definitely doing is in designing this beta version, we're incorporating the voices of all of our stakeholders. So with the support of Salesforce, you know, Cam's been leading a work group on this and doing a phenomenal job. But we have done staff interviews to see sort of like where their pain points are, what their aspirations are for the new version of the system. And I think that that's really the plan to get buy-in is like, you know, if people's voices are heard in the development process, I think that the buy-in comes really naturally. But Cam, I think if you have any other plans.
Yeah, this might be the same for many of you participating in the webinar. We have staff who've been at BDA for a very long time, and their input is valuable, and they have historical knowledge on how things were done, whether that be paper-based or, you know, or digitally, in most cases not, but they have the knowledge on how this, you know, happened. And bringing them to the table to help visualize the process tends to help them buy into the digital like movement of the process. So it helps us. Lauren and I are still, you know, still new in terms of BDA, and so being able to bring a little bit of the old and the new, and then find some common ground around visioning for what this should look like in a system for students or for staff. How would you do that on paper? Where do you keep your notes for students course ratings? And just seeing how they do that, what their processes are, and what their processes are, and then letting them know that we value their process. And now how do we digitize that? And saving staff time, that would be the biggest thing. If people know that you're going to save them 10 clicks a piece, or, you know, you're going to save them, you know, 2 hours each, and it's 60 staff members, you're like, wow, you know, if you can kind of put numbers to the amount of time you're saving people, I think the buy-in kind of slowly comes from there.
Great. I love that. Just speaks to how collaborative you are on the staff side as well as you are on the student side as well. And so just great to hear. I still, you know, once the pandemic is over, I'm still going to make a trip and visit the school because I need to come check it out. And we have time for a few more questions, probably just one or two. So this is a great question. So how much technical help is available to those who are not tech savvy or have a data manager on their team? Any recommendations on that front?
Do you want me to speak to that,
Yeah,
Kara,
I think this might be more towards you all.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. So happy to help address that. That's a really great, important question, and there's a few different layers to it. So, well, actually, and maybe I'll turn it over to BDA to ask one question just to give some context, right? I imagine there's not an army of developers at Boston Day and Evening Academy. So if you want to just speak to kind of quickly, like what does that look like over there?
Yeah. So at our school, it looks like me.
Okay.
So it is just one person trying to like make these systems talk to one another and make sure teachers have the reports they need to do the things. So I think just building systems and timelines around supporting staff members. And you may not have the one-to-one time built into your schedule. So we've built a Connects guide for staff, and what do you call it? It's an enclosed website, so it's private to the school.
Internal,
There's a lot of how-to tutorials. So I do a training when staff is new, when staff members are new to BDA, and then they can access that portal over and over. How do I do this? You know, there's plenty of guides.
So I love that. Thank you for that context. So I think there's a few different answers, right? So one is that most schools, when they're implementing and you know, for example, like you saw with BDA, first, let's look at our unique model, then let's implement technology that matches that, right? And not the other way around. Then what schools will typically do is go and find an implementation partner. Salesforce has thousands of certified implementation partners who know the platform well and can help you say, okay, I see, you know, you did a design thinking kind of process here. I see what your process looks like. And now let me help you map that with the platform. platform is highly customizable, and so they'll help you get an implementation that brings your vision to life. So I think that's kind of one part of the answer. The other part is we have Trailhead, so a lot of digital training, and this helps for the accidental admin, so to speak, right? So I don't know how recently Cam learned Salesforce, right? But there's a lot of sort of accidental admins who will learn how to use the platform using our online tutorials. And then the last is we have Premier support, so that you can call in and have someone help walk you through that as well if that's something that you choose to sign up for.
Great.
Those are my answers there. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you both for covering the school side as well as the technology side. I think that's really helpful. And I know we're almost at time. We did have one question just around how is Salesforce continuing to innovate for schools during this time? So that's just a great segue into, the reminder here about Student Success Hub, the new product that's coming out later this year. You can see the link there to learn more. We also wanted to share a link to BDEA's story that dives deeper into all their great work. And so please feel free to go to that link, sfdc.co/BDEA, to check out more about their work. And in regards to some of that question just about how we're continuing innovating, we are working with schools to help them reopen when they're at that phase in time. And so we're more than happy to talk with schools and districts more about that work if you have any questions there. And so lastly, I just want to say a huge thank you to our speakers and to the National Alliance. Patty, thank you so much for hosting this webinar. And we appreciate all of you who joined today. We really hope that you found this session valuable, and we appreciate everything that you are doing to support your school communities during this time. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much to Kara, to Cam, to Lauren, and to Herman for joining us today. And thank you everyone who participated in this event. We encourage you to stay in touch with all of us, and we'll be sharing the recording and other resources with you over the course of the next few days. As a reminder, we will have this and several other recordings and resources available on our website. It's www.publiccharters.org/webinars. So thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.